Just over a year ago, fitness instructor Kristy Sidlar suffered heart failure and underwent a heart transplant at Henry Ford Health. Now she has written a book on her heart health journey to help people like you keep your cardiovascular health in check. Kristy, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to kick you off this morning.
Appreciate having you on. So take us a little bit through your story and what led you up to this point of writing your book, Change of Heart, My Journey of Transplantation, Revelation, and Transformation. It's quite an amazing story that led you to this point, and was the basis for your book.
Yeah, thank you. I was a kind of crazy athlete, actually. I was a fitness instructor back in the late 90s. I passed out in front of my class. Can you imagine your instructor just going down? The doctors at the time told me you probably didn't eat enough last night, or maybe you're a little dehydrated. But I knew in my gut something was wrong. So I kept going to the doctor and we kept trying to find something. They did diagnose me with an arrhythmia, told me that, take some drugs, don't exercise as much, but it may go away as suddenly as it came on. So do what your body can do. And that's kind of the kiss of death to tell somebody who loves to exercise. So I did more and more. And at one point I was rollerblading 50 miles. I was doing 100-mile bike rides. And I thought, well, that's not enough. Let's do a triathlon. So as I was training, I was on my bike and had an episode. It's by myself. It was 1999. I didn't have a cell phone. And for about 45 minutes, I was fading in and out of consciousness on the side of the road, just assuming that was my last birthday. Finally, another cyclist came by. The paramedics came and they shocked my heart back into a normal rhythm. And that's when I was diagnosed with my very serious condition, which was pretty rare back in the late 90s. But it was a progressive disease. And unfortunately, probably the worst news I could have heard was this disease gets worse through exercise. So I had to make a huge lifestyle change. And probably the biggest thing I realized at that moment is if I can't do what I want to do physically, although I could still walk and do yoga and some light exercise, what could I do to make the most of the situation? And that's when I really started to get involved in the American Heart Association, speaking, volunteering, and really trying to get the word out for women's health heart advocacy.
And it's really interesting too, because so many people think that people that are living a healthy lifestyle, they're eating healthy, they're exercising regularly, especially if they're in great shape. Certainly if they're a fitness instructor themselves, that their heart health in particular must be excellent. There can be nothing wrong there, but this is something that can happen really to anybody. So in terms of what you've written in your book, what sort of lessons are there in terms of the cautionary tale of really listening to your body and making sure that if something doesn't seem right, you're getting that checked out? Because in your case, Kristy, it could be something severe, or if it's something minor, it could be something that's maybe able to be addressed early and not become a major issue.
Yeah, that is exactly right. I think, and women in particular, we do tend to take care of everyone else first. We tend to put ourselves last. We tend to brush things off. We have a lot of stressors in life. We're moms. We're not getting enough sleep. We have menstrual cycles that can kind of mess with us. So I think a lot of times we do tend to either ourselves dismiss it, or sometimes we're dismissed by doctors. And I think we just need to really advocate for ourselves. I always recommend to people, walk into your doctor's appointment with a list of questions. Make sure you don't leave that room until you have those questions answered. You can be a little bold. This is a time to be an advocate for yourself and really stick up for yourself. Doctors are busy, but your health is very important. So I think that's a big piece, is just listen to your body. We do have good gut instincts, and just keep going back and making sure that you're getting the answers that you need. I think though, one of the things, heart health obviously is incredibly important, and really it is the number one killer in America of men and women. It kills more people than all cancers combined and car accidents. So it is something, 80% is preventable. And so I think we need to look at not just what the issues could be, but how can we prevent it? And then aside from that, it's not just our physical health. And part of what I write about in my book is there are multiple dimensions of wellness that we need to focus on. That's physical, emotional, social, spiritual, financial, and vocational. And I really believe the fact that prior to my surgery, and as I was going through all of my heart failure, that's what caused me to recover as well as I did, because I was looking at the bigger picture and I was making sure that I had a good social network and that I was being physically active and I had good emotional wellness. So I think there's really a lot to take in when you want to look at the big picture of how to stay healthy as a human.
We're joined by Kristy Sidlar. She is the author of Change of Heart, My Journey of Transplantation, Revelation, and Transformation, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Kristy, you mentioned earlier that you had these issues. You had felt that something was a little bit off. You went to your doctors and they had suggested, okay, maybe dial back your exercise intensity a little bit to try to help prevent similar fainting spells in the future. And you continued on maybe gradually, but getting back to that rate regardless and had those issues. How important is it as people are addressing these issues or trying to figure out what might be going on with them to not only take the consultation of their medical professionals in their life very seriously, but as you said, to ask those questions. What sort of questions should they be asking when they're going through that so that they can get the insight they really need to know about their situation and be ready to adjust their lifestyle based on that?
Yeah, and you brought up earlier that I was a young, healthy woman. I absolutely was not the poster child for heart disease, but what I was the poster child for was a huge history of cardiovascular disease in my family. So I think the first thing is to make sure you're addressing with yourself and checking with your loved ones. Do we have heart health history in our family? So I think that's the biggest piece, is make sure you're talking with your doctor about your history. Also, there is a great tool on heart.org. That's the American Heart Association's website, called Life's Essential 8. And it's looking at things like sleep, the use of nicotine, your physical movement, your diet, your cholesterol is a big number, your blood pressure is a big number, your blood glucose is a big number. So making sure, and if you can go and print that diagram out and just check how you're doing with each of those areas, but make sure your doctors are giving you those tests. And then the last I will say, which I'm a big proponent of, is a test called the calcium scoring test. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't bring it up. It's not covered by insurance, although it's not very expensive, but it is the gold standard test to know if you have any blockage or if you have any thickening of your artery walls. And blockage is the number one reason for having a heart attack. So talk to your primary care doctors about the calcium scoring test and see, especially if you have history, if you can get that test ordered.
We're joined by Kristy Sidlar, author of Change of Heart, My Journey of Transplantation, Revelation, and Transformation, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Kristy, as you went through your process and then went through a transplant, and the transplant happened about a year after you began experiencing your heart failure situation. When did the idea of writing a book about your experiences and trying to help other people through a similar journey or a completely different journey that's kind of on the same route, when did that idea of writing a book come into play, and what did you really want to get out of writing this book?
Yeah. First of all, can I commend you at how well you've been mentioning my title? Almost everybody stumbles over it. So well done. But one of the words in the title is revelation. And I truly did have a very specific revelation when I was in the hospital. So I was a couple days out of my surgery. I was finally coming to be a little bit more alert. And I got to thinking about, there were a couple older men on the other side of me in the ICU. And I went home to a very strong social network. I'm a disciplined person. I knew that going to my cardiac rehab was important. I knew the basics of nutrition. I just kind of had all of the right ingredients to having a strong recovery. And I realized that not everybody had that. And again, that's part of why I created my wellness widget, which really does look at these 6 dimensions of wellness. But for me, I thought I've had this small sphere of people in my life who've been able to see my positive attitude, who've been able to see how I work in these different dimensions of wellness. And it was just really important for me to get that message out to others. So this book is not, it's about my transplant journey, but it's not about if you have a transplant or if you're going to get a transplant, this is the book you should read. This is for everyone. This is a book to realize that our mental state, the way we approach issues, not worrying, being able to look at other ways that we can stay healthy holistically. Those are the tools I want to get into people's hands. And that was the reason for writing the book.
Another word in that title is transformation. And it kind of goes back to revelation also, in that you had a certain lifestyle you were living. You were very disciplined in that lifestyle. And even after going through heart failure and getting a heart transplant, for some, I would presume you get that new heart and you think, okay, well, the old heart was the issue. It's not the heart I have now. I can, build myself back up and get right back into those similar habits. For you, how tough was it to curb that mode of thought? And B, what did you do then to readjust your lifestyle with your new heart to ensure that, that your health was still in check? And how does that then translate to what other people should be doing as they consider their lifestyle after going through similar episodes?
Yeah, I have to say, and not to be flip, but it was so easy for me because of two reasons. One, I just received the greatest gift somebody could give me. So to honor that, it was not about going back to old habits or trying to, dishonor what she has given me. But I think the other piece for me specifically, it had been 22 years since I had run. So to be able to know that, of course, I listened to my doctors. I did the very slow path through my cardiac rehab. I might have been a little stubborn and asked for a little more than they wanted to give me. But as soon as I was able to, put one foot in front of the other at a faster pace than I was doing before, that was absolute pure joy to me. So I think in looking at anybody who goes through a life-changing experience, and, in my case, multiple times, facing death, there is a perspective shift. And I think, for me to be able to come in and say, how do I make the best of this situation? And for me, how do I make up for all this lost time? And, I think if we look at just life in general, life is short. And, whether it's putting boundaries around people that give me energy versus people who suck out my energy, or how do I make myself more physically active, or how can I look at small changes? I'm really big on don't quit things cold turkey. Don't go and make some huge shift. Small incremental changes to get us to a place where each day, each month, each year, we're a little better than we were before.
Yeah, setbacks are just setbacks. And if you approach it from an angle of, okay, I've taken a step back, now I got to take a couple more steps forward and go at it gradually. Eventually, you'll get back to that point and break beyond it, and it'll be like nothing happened. So those setbacks, that really is where it's important to be in the right mindset and to have the right psychological state, or put yourself in the right psychological mode to break through those periods, especially for someone like you that went through this experience. And I can't speak for it, but I would imagine not only physically, but also psychologically, this is a traumatic experience. And so coming back from that, uh, after that experience, how much more important did you then realize, and you've mentioned this lightly so far, that the mental and the psychological aspects of your journey in your recovery, especially, but also in maintaining your healthy lifestyle going forward?
Yeah, so it's interesting going into a transplant. The testing is extremely rigorous. Not only do they want to do all the cardiac tests, but they need to make sure that they're giving a heart to someone who will take care of that. And that's a lot of different dimensions of taking care of it. Meaning, am I psychologically stable enough to make sure I'm taking, when I got out of the hospital, I was taking 32 pills a day. Am I going to be able to cognitively take care of that? Am I abusing alcohol? Am I going to, do I have some kind of disease that's going to shorten my life where this gift should not be given to me? So a part of that, again, I did seek psychological help prior to as part of my evaluation. And that's a big component afterward. A lot of transplant patients have survivor's guilt, thinking that somebody's life ended because of me, which is not the case. But again, somebody died for me to be able to live. So yes, there's a huge component of all of these areas. And again, I have just made a really strong commitment to ensuring that my mental health, my emotional state is as well as it could be. And whether that's making sure that I'm seeking more from my social circle, or if it's looking at talking to a professional, meditation, being able to take a step back. There's so much talk these days about self-care. That's very, very important to do some introspection, do some breathing exercises, get an app that's on your phone. My favorite is called Insight Timer. And there's 2-minute to 20-minute to 1 hour little meditations that are guided. Those things are really important to get yourself centered and just be able to relieve some of the stress, whether it's everyday life or some crazy situation like I was going through.
Changeofheartmemoir.com is the website. That's changeofheartmemoir.com to learn more information. You can also find Kristy's book on Amazon.com, and on Target, and on their website, Target.com, as well as Barnes & Noble's website, barnesandnoble.com. We're joined by Kristy Sidlar. She is the author of Change of Heart, My Journey of Transplantation, Revelation, and Transformation on the Oakland County Megacast. Kristy, if someone's going through a similar battle that you went through with a heart failure with a transplant. This is a great book for them. But what about this book, about this story, the story you're telling, about the lessons you're providing from your experiences? What about this book is good for more of a general population in reevaluating their life, their lifestyles, and how to address their overall health in general?
That's the key right there. It's overall health. I think, much like fitness instructors talk about, you can't spot train something or you can't spot lose weight. You can't spot be healthy if you're just trying to focus on one thing. I'm just going to go to the gym. That's how I'm going to be healthy. There are way many other things in our sphere of how we look at wellness. And I think, I'll close by saying that much like when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant says, if we have air pressure issues and the airbag drops down, who's the first person you're supposed to put it on? Yourself. We can't take care of others if we're not healthy. So if we look at our sphere of our family and our friends and our careers, we have to take care of ourselves first. And again, try something small, take an incremental change, pick one thing. If you look at those 6 dimensions of wellness, pick one component within one thing, but make a change and be willing to fail. I always like to say commit, forgive, commit. Commit to something, know you're going to have a setback, brush it off, don't quit, go back and try it again, and know that we're going to have that cycle going around and around, but you got to keep committing to get better. So yeah, the book is much, much more than just about having a transplant. It is really about how to look at what we can do to have a fulfilling life and feel much more holistically well throughout our journey.
Kristy, anything else that we should know about a change of heart or about this journey you've gone through that would be important for our audience to consider or to keep in mind as they're reading your book?
I really believe that so much of how I've been able to, my surgery was quicker than it should have been. My recovery was quicker than it should have been. I've, had a really great journey. And people tell me this all the time, but it is about my positive attitude. And I think there's so much to be said for mind over matter and being able to look at things. Again, I'm not a worrier. Stress can be such a killer. Physically, it can be a killer, but it can be a killer in so much of how you can receive joy and, progress in your life in a positive way. So, I think not worrying and trying to look at the glass as